Hey guys, what's up? It's Wes. So I've got my drink here, our fuel, and we are going to be looking at a method of painting that I've taught some of my students in the past. It's actually part of one of my Skillshare courses, but it's something that I wanted to talk about here on the YouTube. It's the way that I feel like I've made the most improvement on my digital painting and really my art brain in general over the past 2 years of being a pro. And it's something that's not for the faint of heart. It's really not easy, but trust me, once you get used to it, it's a game changer. You start thinking about art in a different way. You start thinking about your process and the way you go about making images in a completely different way. So let's talk about that. It's something that I call the gauntlet method. And boy, oh boy, if you're not ready, buckle up. Let's figure out what it takes to paint in the gauntlet method. So let's talk about the gauntlet method. I got my energy drink right here. Trust me, you're going to need it. No, I'm kidding. This is, so I will preface this by saying this is kind of like hard mode for digital painting. So this is a technique that's going to help you build confidence digital painting, and your work is going to look more cohesive. It's going to look much more painterly. But what it really does is it brings in some traditional problem solving into your digital work. So a lot of times you're going to hear, hey, I like working in a digital way, whether it's, Photoshop, Procreate, Clip Studio, whatever. But I want it to look a little bit more like a traditional painting. What's the best way to do that? And this is by far and away the best way that I have found to give more of a traditional feel to your digital stuff. So it's funny because I have Elden Ring installed, that new kind of Dark Souls game, or Dark Souls style game by that studio. This is like the Dark Souls of digital painting, if we want to go for the meme stuff. So what is the gauntlet method? The gauntlet method is a set of rules. I made it up. I called it the gauntlet method because it's like running the gauntlet. You are going in, you're fighting in the arena, like you're in it for the long haul. It's going to be a battle, but at the other side, you're going to feel way better about yourself, or you're going to feel worse, but you're going to know what you need to improve. And so mainly it's an exercise on self-improvement by limiting yourself. So what are the 3 limitations of the gauntlet method? So you can really use whatever painting program you want, whatever you feel the most comfortable with. I'm going to be actually using a variety of stuff because I feel like I have a workflow where certain steps of the process work better in certain programs. And we'll talk about that during the narration. But the 3 main rules. The first rule, you must start with a blank canvas. You have to start with a blank canvas. Now you can tone it. You can have a color. You can have a gradient. You can have something on it. As far as a color information or whatever, think of it like an underpainting or a washing of a canvas. So you can do that, but no image, no, bashy stuff, no thing to like trace over, none of that stuff. It has to be kind of a blank color canvas. Now here's where we get kind of rowdy. The second rule. You cannot hit the undo button. You can't do it. At any point, at any time, there is no undo. Every decision you make has to stay on that canvas. Okay? Number 3, and this is where I get like the faces drop. You are only allowed to use 1 layer. You can never hit the new layer button. Ever. You have to use paintbrushes, you can use smudge tools, you can use gradients and lassos and buckets and what have you. You're only allowed 1 layer, you cannot undo, and you must start with a blank canvas. I told you, man, get your energy drinks ready because you're going to need it. This is, if you're used to working in a ton of layers, if you like working non-destructively, meaning any major changes you kind of make on a layer on top, that way you can go backwards. Sorry. Ain't gonna happen. So we're gonna actually watch me do a piece right here. Let me go ahead and find, where do we go? I have a new computer, so I reset all this stuff up. and we'll do a video about that. I'm going to start in Art Rage. And the reason why, this is Art Rage Vitae. The reason why I want to start in Art Rage, one, I have kind of a set of pretty nice, brushes here, and that's well and good. Art Rage is great at kind of that traditional feel, but we're going to be taking this into other things. But here's the main reason why. I'm going to actually get rid of this. I have this image up on PureRef, which is where I'm actually going to do it, because PureRef, I can zoom, I can move, I can do all that stuff quite a bit easier. But really what I'm doing right now, let me drag that over and let me put my cam back on. There we go. So what I'm doing right now, I'm color picking from the photo. So basically I'm getting my palette ready. I'm putting my colors down on my palette before I start painting. And the reason why I'm using Art Rage to do this, other programs can do this fine, but my favorite thing that Art Rage, one of my favorite things, Art Rage Vitae does. So as I'm coming in and I'm kind of sampling, so I'm going to alt click to kind of pick some of these colors. I'm going to go in, kind of zoom around. Let's see, move around. I like some of these. I don't know how much of this stuff is actually going to be in here, but like, okay, let's say that brown color. I'm going to go here, and on my color samples, I'm going to add a sample. And you're going to see it right here. So it's adding my samples. You can see I've already started. I kind of have a lot of these samples. Let me get the kind of this yellow right here from this. Add sample. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and I'm going to sort here. So I'm hitting the options menu on my color sample window. And I'm going to go to sort samples. You can sort them by hue, you can sort them by luminance, or by saturation. So like the richness of the color, the hue, so what side of the color wheel are they on. But the most important one, in my opinion, sort by luminance. We hit that button, boom. Guess what? This is your value scale. Here are your values. It already did it for you. You know what I mean? So this is what we'll be sampling our colors from. I'm going to actually pin this over here. Let me do it under there. Okay, so we'll have it right here. We don't really need the color window because we're just going to lock ourselves into using this. We're not going to use the whole color wheel. We can maybe mess with it a little later down the line if we need to enrich something or whatever. But remember, only one layer, no undo. So any errors you make, any things you need to fix, you need to paint over it. You need to paint over it. And then, we start with a blank canvas right here. So I just wanted to give you a shout out here. So the image that we're using, I believe it's called Vanitas Still Life by Peter Klaas, I think is the name. And when was this made? Like 1630? He's a Dutch painter, and he is kind of a godfather of that type of painting. Where's my PureRef window? I have Windows 11 now, and like, okay, here we go. I have Windows 11, and I love it so far. However, I don't know where anything is. So I'm going to actually bring this up. So let's look at this real quick. So this beautiful piece, and my main goal right here, you see some of this texture here in the background and how these nice browns go into the nice blues and kind of gray, and it has this nice tone that I'm really interested in. And I got a really high resolution version from Wikipedia. So thanks, Wikipedia. So I can see some of these brush marks right here. So you can see these kind of little, I'm looking more about technique. I don't want to get this exactly one-to-one. In fact, I'm probably like, instead of the full piece like this, I'm probably going to zoom in a little on it and like do something kind of like, maybe like that, maybe? Just a little bit more zoomed in so I can see if I want these shapes. I'll be sure to get the whole skull, something like that probably. I just love the values. I love the value range. I love using those warms and then the little hints of cool to kind of help with that stuff. So this is what I'm going to be studying. That's another thing that's important about the Gauntlet method. Pick a thing you want to focus on. Trying to make a full-on big old masterpiece painting in the Gauntlet method is extremely difficult and extremely time-consuming. So pick a thing you would like to do. Do you want to work on your brush work? Do you want to work on blending from your lights to darks? Do you want to work on shape language? Do you want to work on composition? Do you pick a fundamental, because this is a very fundamental way to work. But remember, guys, the three things you got to remember: do not undo. Start with a blank canvas and only use one layer. Now, I will say, whenever, let's say you're doing what I do and you start in one thing and then transfer it to something else. So, like if I start in Outrage and then move to PaintStorm Studio and then from PaintStorm Studio into Photoshop, which I think is probably going to be, I might put Clip Studio in there as well. But we'll talk about that in the narration because I haven't painted this yet, so I don't know. Just know that if you do like copy merged and you bring it into a new program and then just like copy paste or whatever, it may make another layer. Just go ahead and delete that extra layer that it gives you, like the untitled layer or background layer or whatever it is. That way you just have your one working layer. Basically, this is just a way to build confidence that you can solve problems. You can do this. You are good enough. You have the skill necessary. And this is just an exercise. You know, this is something, but I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, this is the exact way that I improved, in my opinion, pretty dramatically over the course of 6 or 7 months. It's actually my preferred way to paint now. Whenever I work with a client, I have to make it a priority to make layers because I'm so used to working in one layer. When I hand them a Photoshop file, they're like, where are your layers? I don't work in layers, man. Sorry. Like, I just paint. You hired me to paint. But, you know, depending on the client, they may need layers. You can definitely manipulate and do all that stuff too. You can work with the gauntlet layer or the gauntlet method with layers, but it's actually harder. I just wanted to get all of the digital art fuss out of my workflow. I didn't want to care about layers. I didn't want to care about certain blending modes. I didn't want to care about that. I just wanted to look at a thing and I wanted to paint it. And then like doing one layer, no undo, paint over it, fix it in post, you know. You can use a liquify tool to smudge stuff around. That's like using a wet paper towel and kind of smudging stuff with, you know, oil paint or whatever. So, you know, other than that, the world is your oyster, man. But trust me, make it somewhat easier on yourself because this is not easy. Like I said, if you're not used to working this way, you're in for a ride. But let's do this. Let's do some gauntlet method painting. Let's figure this out. Let's work through some problems. And let's talk about how this can help you level up your art. Let's get to it. Alright guys, so here we are for the gauntlet method. I just got done with the painting, and I will tell you, please stick around for the whole painting, because on the last bit where I want to like zoom, you know, zoom the canvas so you can kind of see the whole thing, instead of hitting the spacebar button, which, you know, if you hold down the spacebar and kind of drag your mouse around, you can move your canvas. I was accidentally hitting the Alt button, and I put a giant gash line across the entire painting. And you know the rules of Gauntlet Method. We talked about it. No undo. So I had to paint over it. Oh, okay. So what is this? Like, what insanity is the Gauntlet Method? Like, why would you possibly do this if you have Photoshop, if you have, you know, Procreate, if you have all these things, and one of the benefits is you can do undo, you can make layers. Why in the world would you limit yourself so, like, severely? And the answer is, it makes you think about what you're doing. So the reason why you improve so quickly using this method is you can't help but improve. You have to pre-plan everything. You have to know why you're doing a certain action. It's not maybe to the level, because, you know, whenever I start messy, as you're seeing right here. I basically just got those color samples. I just start putting them there kind of where I think they might go, and then I start refining after my canvas is filled up. So for this one I used Outrage for my canvas block in, and maybe some more specific brushes. Really the underpainting was done in Outrage, and then I brought it over to PaintStorm Studio, which I'm really liking because of how fast it is and how it still gives me that nice traditional feel, and I've customized the brushes to feel exactly how I want. And if you're interested in getting these PaintStorm Studio brushes, I will link in the description I think it's my 2020 brush pack. It comes with some Photoshop brushes, but it also comes with this. It's either that or the Platinum Brush Pack, I can't remember. But I'll have a link in the description. So if you have PaintStorm Studio, we have a video about it. Great deal for $19. If you're interested in these brushes, feel free to go check them out. But anyway, basically, it's not as intense as like you have to think about every single brush stroke. You're just, paralyzed by fear of making a mistake. Like, that's not the point. In fact, I'm more nervous about making a mistake whenever I have a bunch of layers and stuff, because at that point my mindset is so caught up on like, well, I got to make sure my layers are clean and my groups are labeled and my it's the minutia that I don't like. It's the stuff that's taking me out of the creative part of painting. And using one layer, starting with a blank canvas and never using the undo button, it seems insane, but try it. Trust me. It doesn't even have to be a big still life or a master study or whatever. It can be anything. I think what you're going to start finding out is how peaceful it is, at least in my opinion, because who cares? Like, you're not worried about it. You're going and you're doing your thing and you're in your own mental space and you're just putting paint strokes down, man. You're putting lines, you're sketching in stuff. You're just creating. You're letting your brain focus on what's important. And I genuinely do think, and I know the thumbnail is kind of clickbaity, like improved doctors hate him, one cool trick. It's like, you know what I mean? But I genuinely do think that this is kind of a cure for what ails you. If you're in this rut with digital painting, or painting in general, really, I mean, but with, traditional painting, you kind of have to do it this way, like just by the nature of using physical, you just got to kind of do this. Because you're constantly taking action. You're never allowed to step back. Like if you're a watercolor painter, that watercolor dries in seconds. You know what I mean? So you have to do this. You have to think about what you're doing before you do it. And that's where you also start getting the feel of more traditional painting, is because you're solving problems like a traditional painter. You're not undoing, you're not layer blending, you're not multiply layering, you're not doing these kind of hacks and tricks and cheats and stuff you might find online, which are really helpful. Don't get me wrong, man. I love them. I use them all the time. I use them on my personal work and on my pro work. It makes life so much easier. I love bringing in like a brick texture and then just like warping it to perspective and like painting over it and whatever. It's genius. Like, oh my God, you know how much time that saves? But sometimes you gotta buckle down. You gotta paint, man. You gotta get your brushes. You gotta throw away some of those tricks that are doing some of that work for you, and you just gotta go. So this is the way to do it. Just stay on one layer. What you're also gonna notice is your brushes behave slightly differently than you might have realized whenever they already have visual information on the canvas to mix with. So this also builds confidence in your tools. It builds confidence in, hey, this brush feels a certain way. It feels pretty good. How, maybe I've been using them in kind of a stilted way. I had no idea they felt this nice, or they felt this natural, or they felt, you know what I mean? You can get so caught up in your own method that just really flipping the script and doing something dramatically different can kind of awaken something. And you're like, maybe this brush I had in a brush pack that I don't like as much, let me give it a shot with this method, because maybe there's a spot for this. Maybe it was like a weird pastel charcoal-y brush and it didn't quite work, but now you realize, hey, that can work perfectly as like an underpainting, because it still has visual information. It still has some gaps where I can fill in things. You know what I mean? Like, and it's really up to you. And like I said, this is useful for any digital painting program. I mean, you can use something that's a little more traditional based, like a Corel Painter, Rebel, Art Rage, PaintStorm Studio, or you can use something a little more stamp based, like your Photoshop's Affinity Photo. There's stuff kind of in the middle there, like Krita and Metabang and Paint Psi. What's that thing called? I've never used this. But Procreate Infinite Painter. There's a plethora of digital painting software. But the whole idea is to get rid of that kind of overwhelming paralysis by analysis. Whoa, I gotta stick with my method, and I gotta do my line art, and I gotta color underneath, and then I gotta color and do my values, and then I have to color overlay, and then I have to, if you have a certain method and it works for you, that's awesome, but try this out. I promise you, you're going to learn something. You're either going to learn that you're better than you think you are, which is kind of why I want you to do this, because I think you are better than you think you are. Trust me. It's you sometimes have to realize that you can solve problems. You don't need the tools of the software to solve them for you. You can solve them. You've been painting. You've been doing. You've been doing this stuff. So yeah, like, you got this. You got it. It's really daunting. If you're not used to working this way, it's incredibly daunting. But I think the reason why it's daunting is it forces you to pre-plan certain things. And then you really have to notice, well, what's important in my workflow? Like, how I work, how I paint. What is important and what can I get rid of? So this is a way to kind of trim the fat. You know how we talked about exercises, right? And you exercise the one body part and all that stuff. This is that. You're exercising your brain and you're exercising your problem solving. But you're doing it in a way that's also helping your normal method. So you can take lessons that you learned through the Gauntlet method. And you can do this however often you want. I mean, legitimately, I love painting this way. Like, more often than not, I paint this way kind of all the time. I might make 2 or 3 layers, but that's it. I'm not a big layer guy anymore. I used to be. Every little thing I would want to put on its own layer and move and shift. And like I said in the opening, sometimes for clients, if they still want something that structured, I will definitely do it. But if they just need me to go and do a paint over of something, done. When do you need it? You know what I mean? Like, you have a confidence now because you're like, oh, I can fix anything. It may not be the best painting in the world, or it may not be the best art you've ever seen, but I'm comfortable enough with my tools that I can go in and smudge some surfaces and, put some paint on a canvas and make it look okay. And I think getting over those fears, getting over that hurdle of being so trapped by your current method, you're going to improve. You're going to improve after the first time you do this. I promise. It sounds dramatic, it sounds ridiculous, but it's so wacky that it works. You're taking everything good about digital art and getting rid of it. You know what I mean? Like, you're tossing it out the window. You're not undoing. You're not multiple layering. You're not starting with, a photo bash or whatever. You're starting with a blank canvas. You're not allowed to hit the undo button or step backwards or whatever. You always have to move forward, and that's it. Like, that's it. That's all you got. So let me know what you think about this. I would love to see the art you make with this method. It's tough. This painting right here took me, I think, 1 hour and 51 minutes. I'm looking at the math right now. My first session was like 1 hour and 1 minute, and the other one was like the second session was like 49 minutes. So yeah, I broke it apart, did that first underpainting pass in Art Rage, and then went into Paint Storm and kind of just had some fun, refined some of my edges. So really what you're going to notice is value plays a huge role in this, how light or dark something is. Colors are whatever, like they're going to blend pretty well. You can kind of pick whatever color, as long as your values are okay. We always say value does the work and color gets the credit. But as long as you got that, I think you're good. And then edges. Really focus on your edges. Soft edges versus hard edges. Where are the edges most important? Like the change of a plane on a face. And this is why I like doing skull studies, because on the skull itself, you have so many different edges. You have the edges around the orbital, you have the edges around kind of where the nose and what is it, the zygomatic bone, that cheekbone style thing, and then you have the actual cranium that's really smooth, but it can still have dents, it can still have some sort of blemish on it. So you really have to kind of hone in and focus and see where are these changes happening. I mean, you can do the gauntlet method in black and white. In fact, if you're nervous about starting this way, go ahead and get pure ref, get a cool picture that you like the look of, and just do a black and white study. That way you don't even have to worry about color and mixing colors wrong, because that's a whole, color theory is a crazy thing. But yeah, just go ahead, give it a shot. The first time you try this, you will probably hate it. I promise you. But keep at it, because I think if you're anything like me, you're gonna get frustrated enough to be like, no, I can do this. And then you're gonna do it again, and then it'll be a little better, and then you'll be like, and no, I can do better than that. And then you're gonna keep doing this self-improvement. And then what you're gonna notice, as you work in your normal method on your different programs or what have you, even on your sketchbook, your traditional art, your art's gonna be better because you have a little bit more confidence. You know you can solve these problems. But let me know what you think about the gauntlet method. I did teach this on Skillshare, and I think I have my Skillshare link in the description. If not, let me know. God, I haven't done a Skillshare class in like 3 years. But anyway, this is my favorite painting method. I love it. You will improve so quickly. You will learn how to see. You will learn how to train your eye and value and color and edges, and it's a level. You can do this with or without a computer. You know what I mean? And that's why I love it. But anyway, that's it for me. Hope you guys are doing well. I know spring break's coming up, so if I don't talk to you until your spring break, be safe. Hopefully the weather's getting better for you. But that's my time. My socials are going to be in the little post deal, and I thank all my patrons for their incredible support. Cannot do it without them. Join up, man. It's only $1 a month forever. I will never raise the price. You get access to a Discord. We get to chat and share art and talk about stuff and talk about YouTube videos. And it's a fun environment. Lovely, beautiful people, incredible artists. This is another reason I have to do the gauntlet method, is I have to keep up with the artists on my Discord, man. They're putting me to shame. But that's my time. I'm Wes. I will talk to you guys soon. But until then, take care. Peace.